was in housing. We also will focus on business and economic development. We haven't gotten there yet. But where we're at right now is we have a committee. The committee is an automatic committee. I chair it. I serve on that committee along with my colleagues, Alderman Rainey and Alderman Braithwaite. We serve the community's most concentrated Black neighborhoods, the 5th, the 2nd, and the 8th Ward. We have passed in our committee the first housing policy, which is a $25,000 direct benefit to Black home buyers or Black homeowners in Evanston. And this is the first $400,000 of $10 million that we have set aside for this program. And I should have started there. The program is being funded by our recreational cannabis sales tax, which we know passed in Illinois in 2020. We started receiving that tax revenue in November of last year, and we've committed the first 400,000 of that 10 million for this initial initiative. So we have 9,600,000 plus more, because the beauty of the city that I live in, we are full of leaders and we are progressive, and the community has begun to contribute to the fund. It is a tax deductible fund. Private residents, family foundations, businesses, the faith community, they have begun to contribute. A synagogue in town recently gave its first contribution. We had a Catholic church that has given, and the faith community broadly is looking at how they might participate in reparative justice by way of reparations for Black residents. So that will be going to the city council for a final approval on May 8th. And at that time, we can begin to deliver benefits to Black residents that have been injured. And you're gonna learn more. I'm not even gonna get into all of the details, but you're gonna learn more from Dino Robinson when he comes in, because he is our partner. He is our local historian. He is the keeper of all of our Black history in Evanston and on the North Shore. So he's going to be able to tell you a lot about your own village or city as well. He has 350 linear feet of Black history, and it includes the discrimination and anti-Black housing practices, policy, and culture in our city in Evanston. And that is the case for the work and the policy that we have in our city. We have a declining Black population due to lack of affordability, lack of a sense of place. We are now about 16% of the population when we had been in the mid-20s in the past. And we have a $46,000 on average household income divide between Black and white Evanston. We have a 13-year life expectancy disparity. We have an education gap, and so on, a home ownership disparity. And we know that wealth is mostly more likely to be built through home ownership, no matter the community or the race. So restoring the ability for Black residents to purchase and also sustain the homes that they have already will be an initial way, at least $25,000 of wealth, instant wealth that is built either through equity or through acquisition of homeownership, and the benefits of homeownership beyond just acquisition, just stable housing, having a home, a sense of place. Residents that own their home in those neighborhoods have, less crime and better quality of life. The neighborhoods are more well kept. So there are benefits. There's actually support that children that have more stable home have better learning experiences. So the benefits go on. And I'm speaking as a resident in Evanston that had moved many times, about 11 times between 0 and 17 before I left for college after high school.
Robin, that's a lot to unpack. tremendous amount of work, tremendous amount of effort for many years. I was hoping that also we can unpack some of the things you're saying. Just let's talk about the definition of reparations. I know within Evanston, it's very specific in terms of addressing redlining, discriminatory housing practice, historic racism in Evanston. You know, the notion of reparations, I think, is something pretty new to, at least new to me, new to some folks in the community. Can you just address what it means generally speaking? Is it more of a process? Is it a specific concern? Is it something that's ongoing? What's the definition of reparations?
So the definition is, I think I mentioned that the attempt to bring repair to egregious harms against a particular community. So it's reparations have been paid. I actually just spoke on a couple of days ago in the Day of Remembrance for the Japanese American community who were paid reparations for their imprisonment and here in the United States. So it is an opportunity to bring repair. Now we're talking about it from a legislative process and under international law, which is the language that has been adopted here in the reparation movement in the United States for the Black community. Full repair would include 5 components, including cessation or guarantee of non-repetition of terrible anti-Black policy in our case, restitution, compensation, rehabilitation. So these components are happening in our city in various ways. So compensation, of course, is going to be the direct benefit to the residents, but rehabilitation in the sense of guaranteeing the, or reestablishing the dignity of a people by the work that Dino Robinson is doing. So something else that we've done in our city is we've passed a African-American heritage site, which is at this point several locations around the city that will honor historically significant Black locations and properties and tell the story of the Black community in Evanston that has been lost over time. But HR 40 is what we hear about most. Evanston is the first to pass a local initiative that is funded, and we still are the only city to pass a funded initiative. Others have passed resolutions as well. But HR 40 is a slavery reparation policy that has been introduced the last 32 years. It's in Congress. There was just a congressional hearing last week, and there were presenters, including ally leaders from the Japanese American community in solidarity with the Black community, that it's time for reparations, that we are overdue for repair. And the repair must start today, especially if we are a nation and a community and communities that say we are not anti-Black, and that we are looking at repair. So that policy has more co-sponsors than ever in its history. It has, it ended the last congressional season with 173 original co-sponsors. Our Congress people are original co-sponsors. Congresswoman Jan Jakowski is. It has its first ever Senate companion bill that was introduced by Senator Cory Booker. And before our vice president was in her current leadership role, she was an original co-sponsor for what was then S10. It's now S40. And then we have our Congress people, Senator Durbin and Senator Duckworth, that also are original co-sponsors for reparations for Blacks in America due to the enslavement of African people. So we're talking about crimes against humanity, which were determined by the United Nations at the World Conference Against Racism, and support for reparations in America. We're talking about the impact of what kidnapping Africans and bringing them here to this nation and enslaving and torturing them, raping, discriminating against, Jim Crowing then later on to current day discriminations, war on drugs and over policing, police terror, racial terror, predatory lending practices, redlining, micro and macro aggression. So these are the conditions that we're still living with. And it's so Hillary Beckles says that we're in the jet streams of the consequences of slavery right now, and we're still living with the impact today.
Thank you so much. Now, I know we have a lot of questions. I'm already getting some, so I'm just going to give a little bit of the protocol for questions. Since we have so many people on the call, if you would just put your question in chat. And I already have a lot of questions, but I will save it because we already have a question for you, Robin, and it is, have lenders who provide mortgages agreed to support the program?
So I'm really sad to say that we don't have that commitment yet. We had been given the verbal commitment, and we've been working the last several months with one bank in particular that we would have. What the ask was that there would be a portfolio of financial products available to partner with our reparation goals. So it would be a mortgage with a preferred rate. It would be, a waiver of closing costs. It could be a list of other financial products like checking accounts and savings accounts that have some type of incentive. And after several months of believing that we would have a presentation on what that portfolio of products was, we were told that they can't do it. So it's still a goal, and I will keep looking for financial partners until we get to one that has the heart to be the first to bring justice and repair to the Black community.
Thank you. It's interesting that you mentioned that challenge, because you're making this sound awfully easy. I mean, this is groundbreaking. This is really tough. It took many years. It's been a lot of discussion. So what have been some of the challenges overall? This obviously getting lenders to agree to mortgages, but I'm also just wondering, getting the buy-in in the community. I can imagine that there must have been some pushback. Why are we doing this? Is it the right thing to do? How is this going to make an impact? What are some of the challenges in terms of getting the community around this initiative?
There was almost no pushback in Evanston. So we had a 8-1 vote in support of reparations. There was broad support beyond the Black community, institutional support. My letters of support for this introduction included, our state senator, organizational leaderships. We are getting the challenges now on it's not enough, or why housing and why not cash payments. Those are the types of challenges that we're dealing with right now, but we passed it really kind of quietly. So on the day that it was introduced and passed, normally we have a full council chambers, and it was a really quiet night, and as it related to that agenda item. And the next day that it passed, it was a national and later international news story. And the excitement in the community has grown. And the pushback is really only more in application and distribution at this point. And that's from all members of the community. Some members don't want a housing benefit. They want only a cash check. And I try to educate everyone, or inform as much as possible, that this is not a slavery reparation. This is not to replace HR 40. Our city is in support of HR 40. And in 2002, under the leadership of Judge Lionel Jean-Baptiste, who was then our second ward alderman, we passed a resolution to support HR 40, along with some other things to support the Black community. So it was not difficult, because my introduction of this was not an emotional case. I didn't come with any grievances or stories. I came with data. As a municipal leader, we deal with data. I put before us what we say we value as a city, and use this as an action plan to reach the goals that we said we had for the city. So I would have considered anything less than support of this a contradiction to the things that we say that we value, because we can't year after year say that we value Black lives and inclusion and that we all have the same lived experience and continue to do the same thing that has only sustained our discriminating, our disparities and our oppression in the Black community. If our efforts are only sustaining $46,000 on average household income divide year after year after year, then we must do something different, radically different, as radical as the Jim Crowing and redlining that got us to this place of disparity. So there was not much pushback.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm going to ask you a couple of hard questions that people might have been too shy to present on the call, but here's a couple of harder questions. So I've heard reparations only compound the unfairness, place an enormous burden on society, and unjustly sentence of all of us for a crime we didn't commit. We weren't alive to commit them or even in the affected areas to commit. How do you address something like that?
Well, you may not have been alive to participate in chattel enslavement, but the injury and the crimes and the benefit of those crimes have been enjoyed by the white community for generations by wealth transfer that was largely established in the slave trade. So we have a responsibility as a nation and as cities to address those crimes and those harms against a community.
That's great. Wonderful answer. And a tough one to answer. And you answered that in a way I'm sure would be very compelling for a lot of people. I have another tough question, but I'd love to see questions from folks. I know this is not a shy group. Maybe it's a slow typing group. So go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and then I'll ask another one that I've heard from people. Well, why aren't fill in the blank? Jews, Italian, Irish, etc., eligible for reparations? They suffered discrimination. How about them?
Well, as I stated, the Japanese American community has been given reparations in the form of a $25,000 cash benefit, as well as an endowed education fund for educational use in perpetuity. And this is not a competition about who is most oppressed, but it is a fact that the chattel enslavement was the founding tenets of this nation, and that has to be addressed. Very much in support of other communities. Stand in solidarity publicly with other communities is something that I have always done, but I'm not going to shy away from the specific and targeted needs specifically for the Black community because of the injuries and harms due from the transatlantic slave trade that continued on in various ways. And in our city, it's in housing policy discrimination.
Thank you. That's great. Well, since this is kind of a shy typing group, I'm going to just, if people want to raise their hand and take yourself, I'll acknowledge whose hand I see, and then I will call on that person. Actually, a quick point, Ben, are we good on time? Can we go to the end of the half hour?
We have time.
Okay, great.
I just see another question in the chat.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat. Why not earmark some of the dollars for higher education?
We absolutely should. And I'm glad that you brought that up. Because we can't address all of the harm in our one policy, there is an additional fund that is set up. It's held at the Evanston Community Foundation to address education and technical assistance, health, which became more of a became more educated due to COVID, seeing the disparities and the underlying conditions in the Black community, learning more about epigenetics and inherited trauma and how that impacts our community. But our case has to be founded in specific policy in our city, and education is outside of our purview. So that would be something that either our school districts would have to grapple with and introduce, or through this private fund at the Evanston Community Foundation, which has been receiving contributions from the community as well. But you're right, I agree with you completely.
Okay. We have this question. I see that someone needs to show that they lived in Evanston between 1919 and 1969 to be eligible. And I remember on the call with Dino, he said he's not eligible, which was kind of fascinating. So how is that time period determined?
So 1919 is when we had actual anti-Black policy, housing policy on our books. And you'll learn more from Dino about even Black-owned homes that were around Ridge Avenue or east of Ridge being physically relocated to the west end of the Fifth Ward. I have one of those homes across from me. I live on Dodge Avenue. And so those are some of the types of actions that we're taking.
I see a lady.
We know that a home on Ridge Avenue,
Yes,
$1,000 in
a
some cases,
woman, a Black
more
woman.
value. If you can mute yourself.
Can you mute everybody? Can the host mute everybody?
So we know that those homes have sometimes several $100,000 more value. That is one way. And then 1969 is significant because that's when fair housing was passed and actions were taken in Evanston that outlawed unfair and discriminatory housing practices and redlining in our city. So there's one more thing I wanted to say about that. Yes, that's enough.
Okay.
Oh, that's what I wanted to say. Not just those that lived during that time, but their direct descendants. So I would qualify for reparations because I have 5 generations of Black Evanston residents that were here. So through my mother and my grandparents, they were here. So I would qualify as their descendant.
That's great. That's great. I know at the very end of this, we're going to want to understand how our club can be helpful and learn more about this. So we're going to make sure that that gets answered because I know that's something our club members would really like to know. We have this question. Anti-racism efforts to be effective and endure must attack institutional racism existing in our society. For example, textbooks used in our schools ignore so much about our history to present a white-centric mirage. So that was a really interesting observation. I'm wondering, and I read within that question, how does this have a ripple effect, or how can this affect more things that are really related to, for instance, how our schools teach history? Is this intended to have an impact?
It's impacting really every sector of our city. So although we haven't delivered the first reparation benefit to a resident, we hope to do that in the coming months. It has forced businesses and other institutions to think about their role in perpetuating Black racism and its impact and the benefits that they have enjoyed from their privileges. So the reparations is happening. It has started a very uncomfortable and necessary conversation amongst various stakeholder groups. And as I mentioned, there's businesses in town that have designated now a portion of their revenue to fund our reparations at Evanston, and others that are thinking about how they might begin to contribute. There are organizations that are looking at their policy and practices, their hiring and being more inclusive, setting aside opportunities for Black residents. So this is work that we could have been doing before we got to reparations, but we're doing it now. And this isn't to beat up my city. I believe that we live in a nation that is established on anti-Blackness, and we all have a lot of work to do. And we're beginning to be educated in our city and do more structurally and institutionally to repair damages to the Black community.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I know that you've gotten a lot of attention nationally. I saw Danny Glover came to an announcement of this program at Evanston. I'm sure they've gotten a lot of inquiries from communities around the country. So, we live in a predominantly white community. So a question we have here is, what role do historically white towns like Wilmette have to play in the reparations movement?
You have a tremendous role. I would imagine you're historically white because there's some evidence of some anti-Blackness somewhere in there. So you need to first get yourself educated. You need to educate yourself on why you are a historically white city, and it doesn't exclude you from reparations. I've just worked with a city, Amherst, Massachusetts, and I think they have 4 or 6% Black community, something like that. And they passed reparations in their city. They're working now towards how they might fund it and what their benefits might be. So I would say start with educating yourself. Dino is the absolute best person actually in the entire world to help you be educated on what your role is. And then you need to think about what you can do towards repair. Is it going to be, it has to be, because you're going to be challenged legally because there is a nation of folks that will come to your city and challenge you if someone doesn't in your own city. So you'll need to do it in line with documented policy and practices in your city if it's going to be a legislative process. And then organizations can do what you should do. Where was the harm? How can you help? If you decide that your organization hasn't done any harm, then figure out how to be a part of the solution anyway. You know, you can contribute financially, you can contribute your intellectual talents, you can work on policies. I think scholarship is huge. I don't remember who mentioned that, but you may want to, work with your educational institutions for more opportunities for college or tutoring. I mean, there are many ways that you can support, and you first have to really do an assessment of the areas of injury, assessment of the Black community. You want to engage the Black community and have them tell you what their experience has been as a Black person in Wilmette and how that has impacted their lives and what they think could add value to their lives and a better experience in your city.
Thank you. I'm taking notes on that one. I'm sure other people are as well. There was a very similar question from Malika. Was your question answered in that? Or did you have any more in addition to that?
I really was wondering if you had a feel for how fast and wide the movement is spreading from a city standpoint. I understand what's going on in Congress, but I'm imagining a lot of cities are reaching out and just trying to get a sense for what you think the future holds for cities like Evanston and sounds like Amherst doing this on their own.
Yeah, there is a rapid momentum right now after we passed there. I'm a member of National League of Cities. So I've been able to present to that body, which is 4,000 elected leaders across the nation in small and large towns that represent about 2,400 cities and villages. So there's momentum. I've lost count of how many. There actually is a database that is I'll send it to you, but it's with Howard University in Columbia. I think it's called the Racial Redress Network, and they have a database of all of the local actions. The state of California actually just passed reparations. I think that's been in the last month or so. She was one of the members to testify at Congress last week for HR 40.
Great, thank you.
The city of Chicago passed it. I should mention that, the city of Chicago.
Yeah, pretty significant. There was a question also about some of the challenges overall to reparations. And this was a question that over the years, affirmative action programs have been tossed out as being unconstitutional. Is there any concern that this program and others like it will be challenged in the courts?
Absolutely.
Is it being already challenged? I mean,
It's inevitable.
No, it hasn't been challenged yet. Like I said, we have a lot of support in our city. We expect some challenges, and we are really proud to have the law departments of some significant universities in this nation, as well as a few national law firms that are on standby to support us if we need so. But we haven't had any challenges yet. I expect them to come when the benefit is delivered, somewhere around there.
Great, thank you so much. Mike Bailey, I see your hand up.
Yes, could you talk a little bit about how you went through the process of determining the amount of assistance, for example, the 25,000, and, perhaps that relates to, staving off legal challenges and so forth?
So the 25,000 was a palatable number. I want to be clear that we don't have, as a local government, the resources to deliver justice completely, or that full repair number. So 25,000 would allow, based on the average home price in our city and the cost of acquisition, it would allow a significant support for new home buyers, and it would give relief to those that own homes already. But it's not a scientific calculation on how we got to that number. It's our first tangible step to do something while we wait on new federal legislation.
Great. And Mike, you're good with the answer? Okay, it's complete then. I got this really interesting question. Beyond mere moral persuasion, what incentives are there, both practically and personally, for whites to support reparations and initiatives for affordable housing?
I'm so glad you asked that. So, unfortunately, the moral argument isn't enough. And there is a cost to uplifting the Black community. It is something that I'm hoping to get support and resources so that we can calculate that. My work was inspired by a report called The Cost of Segregation. It was done by the Metropolitan Planning Council about 3 years ago, and it was based on the city of Chicago. And they came up with a dollar amount through appropriate calculations on how their segregation, more specifically, was impacting the city of Chicago, and what improving that might be, and giving fair opportunity to underserved communities, how it might improve the city. And it was, I believe the number was $8 billion benefit to the city's tax base. It calculated how many more bachelor's degrees the city would have if they had racial justice. It calculated the reduction of violent crimes and health disparities or life expectancy disparities. It's a report I would love for us to have in Evanston, so that those that still are unsure about why reparations understand, and even more so, we can understand with more urgency how this could impact the entire community.
Thank you, Robin. I'm going to give you some homework, which will be to give us a list of resources.
Oh, okay.
As you can tell, we're on a journey, and all these things you've mentioned, several that have been really terrific, and love to get more from you, and we can talk about that later. I'm getting that question, like, what more can we learn, and what more can we do? And I'm just wondering too, as individuals, so we're talking about a kind of a structure, the government, our local commissions and so forth. What do we do as individuals to support
Reparations? But
Yes.
what you do as an individual is you can be intentional about hiring Black contractors, shopping at Black businesses, supporting organizations that are supporting Black families. If you have property that you're selling, maybe you want to consider selling it more affordably. That might be a stretch. Everybody's in business, but it really is a challenge for you to extend yourself, reach beyond what is comfortable, and do more in the form of justice. If you look at your lived experience and your family lineage, and you can see where your privileges may have certainly have given you an upper hand at life and an opportunity to live differently in a beautiful city like Wilmette with a lot of privileges. I would just challenge you to consider how you might contribute to the movement, if it's philanthropically, if it is in using your social capital. Social capital is everything. Just networking, giving someone an introduction can change their life. These are different ways that you can support, and just continuing to be educated. If you still just aren't really feeling it, and you're not bought in, and you didn't have a slave, and that's where you stand, I would challenge you to continue being educated. Read the 1619 report if you haven't. Learn more from Shorefront Legacy. There's so much continuing education about our history in this nation and our history in cities across this nation. So I would just challenge you to do what you're doing right now. Continue on this journey and keep being informed. And once you get the right amount of information, your heart will be pricked and you will do something in line with your values, I'm confident.
Thank you. That's really beautiful. And you opened up talking about RILA, and now we're talking about things we can do. So that's one of the things we've talked about in our club. How can we be effective with the programs we already have? So I think that's completely in line with what we're doing. I know we're getting close to that end of the meeting, and I didn't want, if Ben and Jim and folks had some things that they need to do in terms of business, I just want to see if we have time for 2 more questions, or should we?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I didn't want to miss anybody if I didn't see hands, because there's a lot of screens there. So let's go for 2 more questions if there's any outstanding there. People want to raise their hand. And Jim.
What about helping renters get in with more affordable rents? Can anything be done there?
It's a great idea. So like I said, affordability is what's driving Black residents out of both of our cities. So if you own property and you want to have your own, I own property and all of my rents are affordable happens to be Black residents, but that's the neighborhood that I live in. But that's something that you can do, not have it at the highest market rate and reduce that rate to what is affordable, which is 30%, no more than 30% of your total income.
Very interesting. Anyone else? One more question? Okay, well, I bet we have more questions for you, Robin. So how do we reach you if we have questions? I know that you're very much in demand and a lot of folks have questions for you.
You can reach me at rsimmons@cityofevanston.org. And I am available at that address until May 9th or 10th. I don't remember the exact day. I am not running for re-election. And after that, you can reach me at robin@robinrue.com. I'll share more information after my term on what is next in my civic and professional career. Really excited to work more fully on reparative justice for the Black community in Evanston and beyond.
And we'll definitely stay tuned on that.
I recommend that you go to the City of Evanston website, which is cityofevanston.org/reparation. And we have put all of our information on there. We are very transparent government. All of our meeting minutes and different resources that have been recommended. Our town halls are recorded on there, the ones that were on Zoom anyway. You can learn more about the details of what we're doing there.
Awesome. Thank you
so much. And one more thing, we have an incredible staff. So I was just the one that made the introduction, but our staff and our committees, our community really did the work. So one thing that I have to say is our staff has been working hard to support us in this process as well.
Fantastic. Well, we're almost to the bottom of the hour. So Jim, do you wrap it up?
Yeah, I'll wrap it up.
Okay, thanks.
Alderman Simmons, it was a great presentation, very helpful information for us. We're very appreciative that you're able to share some of your time with us. For Rotary, one of our major priorities is putting an end to polio, which still exists in the world. And again, it's a major priority. And in honor of your presentation, we're going to donate to the Rotary International End Polio Now Fund. And we have a special certificate, which maybe Ben could put on the screen in recognition to your presentation today. So thank you very much. It was great. And
thank you very much. Jim, will you send me that certification? I love certificates. As you can see, I have them from 1992.
Okay. Do we know where to send it?
I'll send it. my address.
Okay. All right. And then Susan, George, wonderful work also about leading this today. With that, we have a couple minutes left. Are there announcements or things that members want to say before we adjourn the meeting? Well, we have 3 minutes left. If there's no other announcements, we could adjourn early today. Does anyone have anything they want to say before we close off? I don't hear anything. So I'm going to take my little flip phone for all you old timers, and I'm going to say the meeting is hereby adjourned.
Night, or good morning. Thank
Morning.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.